Greetings, it is I, Tentus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and of course, welcome. Welcome back to talking about the various characters and important figures within the world of Vampire the Masquerade, in the world of darkness. It has been a while since we talked about these, and I'm hoping to return to them as a more regular basis. Sorry about the delay. Anyway, so for today, I do have an interesting figure for you. The Brujah Antediluvian. Alright, before we really start talking about Brujah, there's probably a couple of things that we have to talk about. The Brujah Antediluvian. There's technically two that go by the Antediluvian title. The original Brujah Antediluvian, the true ancestor of them, and Troile. At least a character known as Troile that's supposed to be the usurper of the Antediluvian Brujah Antediluvian. It's going to be a little difficult to talk about that. We're going to kind of, have to do two videos here. So this one's going to specifically be on the original Brujah Antediluvian, but there are going to be some layering with Troile because there's a lot of weird rumors and a lot of weird information about it that's kind of hard to understand and kind of strange. But again, we're going to try to piece this apart here and separate the two of them, if they are two people and not one person, because that's going to be something that we're going to talk about too. And also, before we kind of get into this entire mess of the Troile Brujah Antediluvian, let's talk about source material, because that's something that seems to be a popular thing with you folks out here. First off, check out the Clan Book Brujah. Now, this is the original edition of the Clan Book Brujah, not the revised edition. That's going to have some information out of it. Look at page 14 as the beginning page for you to find information about that. You're seeing fragments from Vampire the Masquerade Dark Ages. Page 110 has a few excerpts about it that talks about these things. And the last one is going to be the Gehenna source book, page 101. Now, there's a couple other books that do mention things about here that I will be talking about as sources. There is a book series, The Masquerade of the Red Death Trilogy. I haven't read that. I don't have it. So don't expect me to, use that as a source I'm citing. And for the stuff about Simiche, the clan, thinking about different things, that's the Clan Book Simiche Revised, is the source for where they talk about that. But let's talk about the Brujah Antediluvian now and switch over to it. So, sometimes referred to as Isles or Troile the Elder. Thought to be male, embraced around 8000 BCE, of course, but most of the Antediluvian words. Final death is thought to be around 3000, or he's still alive. One of those weird things about Antediluvians, you don't really know, and there's some stories here we're going to talk about here. So this was the one that brought forth the Brujah clan, which was originally supposed to be more of a learned clan, warrior poets, with kind of medieval versions of the Brujah, the Dark Ages versions, and this was kind of the idea of the learned in poetry that he brought forth. It was the usurping and the kind of violence creation through Troile that got the entirety of the warriors. Anyway, common belief is his sire's Irad. But now, again, we're getting into the problem that a lot of this information has, is there's different sources that say different things. And the Simiche, going back to the Simiche book, say that he was embraced by Enoch/Enosh. So, let's talk about what happened to Brujah. Yeah, the main thing here is he was thought to be diablerized by Troile, his own progeny. And that means that Troile isn't really an antediluvian. He is kind of referred to that because Troile has existed since the time of the third generation and was probably one of the early fourth generations, or one of the fourth generations during that early time. So you can see how referring to Troile as an antediluvian does kind of make sense. Alright, basic biography that we know about is that during the time of the first city, Embraced was one of the original antediluvians created by the second generation. Cain, of course, said no more, was with the rest of the antediluvians as they moved to the second city. Now, during that time of the second city, or sometime briefly after it, we're not sure when this time period would have been. No information says it. He was supposedly slain by his first, and the fact is there's also stories that say he might be the only childe Troile. We're not going to talk about Troile now because that's a different episode. But this was like an act of diablerie, probably one of the first acts of diablerie, unless you talk about some things with the Assamites. That's an entirely different story also, but it's an early act of it. There are some sources that say that, and this is basically one of the storylines in the Gehenna book that you can check out, which we'll talk about in a minute, that he used temporis to save himself. His time-bending discipline, which the true Brujah have. Yeah. And there are some sources, like when I've mentioned the Eurasian fragments, that believe that Brujah's death was a lie spread by the Ventru. Because, of course, people believe it's Ventru lies. Now, in the Second City, Brujah had a basically reputation. He was said to be very cold, very passionless, very meticulous, very intelligence-based. Basically, he was the learned in. And it was this fiery youth named Troile that he basically became enamored with, that led him to this desire to embrace this character, which, I will note, Troile is very genderless. Can be described as male, female, whatever reason. He got enamored with Troile, and after the bond grew for many months after embracing them, Troile became that kind of trusted Ave, maybe even love. And Troile's, of course, embrace was a direct violation of Cain's dictum. Yeah, he didn't want any 4th editions. And there's where a misunderstanding happens, and the reason why Brujah was diablerized. There was a misunderstanding that because Cain's dictum, because it was the breaking of these laws that Cain had put forth, that Brujah would destroy Troile. That's what Troile believed, because of the nature of Brujah and the nature of Troile. And so, rather than, of course, having that happen, he usurped Brujah's power, taking his place. Now, granted, we don't know if Troile was the only 4th generation and then created the next 4th generation, and there was a split after that into the true Brujah and normal Brujah, the true Brujah following original Brujah's ways, or if, there was more generations there and they became the true Brujah and Troile became the new ones. There's impossible to tell. We don't know a lot about this entire thing here, and that's one of the problems with the true Brujah. But let's talk about the Gehenna story. There's a Gehenna scenario, fair is foul, which again, the Gehenna stories are taken with a big grain of salt about how many of them you actually used. It introduces the idea that Troile survived using temporis, and he goes by the name Isles in this one. That's the name that they use to describe him. And Isles basically faked his death using his mastery of time. Yes, Troile gained some power from what he did, but not enough that he actually killed off Isles. Isles used temporis, went forward in time, but the problem with Isles in using temporis is he had to go forward in time a number of years, and he went forward a couple thousand years. But to Isles, his time using temporis was a lot longer. So rather than being like, it's a short time jump, he instead encountered like an outside time period for like 100,000 years. So he had a kind of wounded psyche, drive him insane, drive him to want to destroy Troile and all the progeny. And in this storyline, it does more hint that Troile was the only progeny. Now, the storyline also says that after that several hundred thousand years, in there, several thousand years, Earth years, he emerged in Lilith's garden. When we talked a little sort of about Lilith before, we didn't really hint too much on Lilith. I haven't done a video on Lilith because Lilith isn't actually a vampire, technically. Another type of being. But anyway, Lilith's garden, during the Dark Ages, we're not sure exactly when, and kind of harboring that grudge, especially against Troile, he basically joined with Lilith in order to destroy his child, a grandchild, all of them. So became Lilith's messenger and herald. Fair is foul, basically, as I said, goes for that Troile was the only childer. It says that the true Brujah learned Isles' discipline, temporis, on their own, and basically saw themselves as inheritors of Isles' will, even though Isles is, if we go by fair is foul, doesn't like any of their people, and dislikes them even more because they're living up to his standards, and they're not living up to his standards. It kind of makes a split that all of them were from Troile, and that there's just clan split somewhere down the line. It's hard to say, and the idea that they rediscovered a lost discipline could be true. It could be. It's up to you how you want to determine this entire thing. It's very unusual, and some say it's the true Brujah. Saying that they are from Isles is directly giving them claim of legitimacy, and that they have temperance. But Isles acknowledging that embracing Troile was a mistake, and that embracing more childe would have kind of spit on this, is something that they're kind of discussing with Fair and Foul. But again, maybe he started with Troile, went to others, and then saw the mistake of it. It's hard to say, really. And the idea that the original, the one that he loved the most, was the true mistake, and that led him down this path, could be in existence. And there's a lot of arguments for this, and this entire quagmire and mess of it. And the story Fair as Foul does not help. So, that's it for today. We learned all about the Brujah Antediluvian, the original Antediluvian embraced by one of the second generation, and of course, eventually, maybe diablerized by their childhood Troile. This is a very complex mess that's kind of hard to tell what fits. It depends on, again, what bits of information from those old books and from the material that is shown to us in the books you want to believe. It also is important to determine if you believe some of the Gehenna stories. The Gehenna stories are very optional, and you can take which ones you believe with a grain of salt. Is Isles a time-displaced antediluvian with vengeance issues that only embraced one child? Maybe. Is the Brujah Antediluvian dead? Maybe. We don't know for sure, and it's up to you to take everything that's said here with a big old grain of salt, because many of these figures are mythological for a reason. They're meant to be open-ended, so that if you ever use one or some information about one in one of your stories, you can adapt it how you want. That's why they don't give true answers in any of these books. They just give little bits of information. But I hope this one's very interesting and piques your idea for some concepts for things you could use. Isles, or the Brujah Antediluvian, and Troile the Elder, maybe, and Troile, the one that we're going to be talking about next time. But I hope you're having a great day. Remember, of course, to like, subscribe, share, and comment. All of those are great ways to show support for the channel here. If you want to show extra support, you could always check out the other links down below, such as my Twitch channel, my Discord, where you can easily find out what's going on my schedule and chat with me. And, of course, the Patreon, which is a great way of showing support that you can have more edited content like this come out, maybe even getting me an editor some point in time where this edited content can get even higher quality. And I hope you're going to have yourself a great rest of your day. But until the next time, I bid you farewell.